Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Replay Office Hours. Super excited to see you all. It is Friday, May 20th, and yeah, it's really excited to kind of share some updates of what we've been working on this week at Replay. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome and thank you so much. Just so you know, whatever platform that you're watching this on, we do multicast stream out to a few different locations. So you can always catch us at Replay.io on Twitch and Twitter or replay.io/YouTube. You can also catch past episodes at replay.io/YouTube. So if you see anything you like or you missed anything and you want to go back and check out some of the demos and the debugging and interviews that we've done, definitely check that out. Speaking of kind of that debugging and demos and interviews, so one of the things that we're really excited about with this kind of new streaming setup that we have is the ability to have guests. So the past couple of weeks, we've had members of the Replay team join on. We had Travis and Mark last week to talk about Redux Dev Tools, and Travis to talk about some of the work that he's new to the team and some of the work that he's doing with our design systems and visual debugging. And we're actually excited to start setting up doing kind of having guests on stream that aren't from the team but are from our Replay community. So if you have any like bugs that you'd like to work on together, or if you just want to talk about debugging Replay experience, if you're working on a different kind of dev tool that works well with Replay, or just think it would be interesting, reach out to me. I'm at Cecilia Creates on Twitter, or you can also always hop into our Discord. Let us know if you'd like to be a guest on a future stream. We have these office hours every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, and then whatever your other applicable time zones are. We would love to chat with more members from our community and feature you on stream. So yeah, great. So just to kind of kick off and talk about what we like to do on these streams, I guess I should start by introducing myself. If you don't know, I'm Cecilia Martinez. I am the community lead at Replay. So I spend a lot of time talking to our users, helping make sure that they have the right resources that they need to be successful, so that they can just debug better and get back to developing. I like to do a lot of events and education as well. And so if chances are, if you are attending any kind of major conference this summer, you'll probably run into me. And so feel free to come and say hi. So we'll be talking about that a little bit today too. But yeah, I'd like to start off with just kind of news and updates. We do changelog review. So I'll talk about any new features that we released this week, give us some demos of those. I also like to kind of share what's coming up on our roadmap, highlight anything that you should be aware of or any experimental features that we have available. And then I like to do a little bit of debugging. Typically, we'll either dive into a replay that we have and take a look at some code. And if you have any questions, feel free to add them in chat. So if you are on Twitch or YouTube, you can just use the comment right in that platform and we'll be able to see your questions. If you're on Twitter, just respond to the thread and we'll be checking that as well throughout the stream. So if you have any questions about Replay, debugging, for anything for the team, let me know. And yeah, happy to get those answered for you. So great. I did want to start off by talking, I mentioned we have some events kind of coming up, and we actually will be at 3 events in the next 30 days, which is which is really exciting, right around 30 days, maybe even a little bit less than that. And I'm really excited because we're representing all 3 of like the major frameworks. So I'm going to be talking to Angular developers, React developers, and Vue developers all about debugging, because no matter what framework that you're developing in, you're going to run into bugs. And because they're all JavaScript based in the web, typically you're going to see some similar patterns. So super, super excited to dig into that with you folks. The first one that I wanted to share is, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Yes, okay, cool. Is the Angular Community Meetup. So I'm going to be speaking at the Angular Community Meetup this coming Tuesday. So this is really exciting. I started, let's see, I was a member of the Angular Experience podcast. I was a panelist on that podcast, and that's kind of how I got involved. My very, very first developer position was working with Angular JS, first version of Angular. So really excited to kind of be back in front of this group and talking about debugging Angular applications specifically, talking about process tools, and then also kind of going through some common bugs that you might see. As we talked about last week when Mark was on stream, and kind of referencing Jen Creighton's talk from Reactathon, the best way to get better at debugging is just to see a lot of bugs. And so that's something that I hope that I can bring to this group and show you some bugs that we tend to see, but that are specific to Angular apps as well. So it is a virtual event. It's online on Tuesday. So if you want to register for that, you can go to bit.ly and the URL here. And on screen, I'll also pop that in the chat for you as well. So let me go ahead and pop that in the chat. So if anybody would like to register, again, that's Tuesday evening, and it will also be recorded. So you can always catch the recordings of those as well. So, and yeah, thanks Brian for the comment. So yeah, that's Angular. So if you're an Angular developer, make sure you check out that. Next one I'd like to talk about is another React event. So we were just at Reactathon in the Bay Area. And now I'm really excited about this one because we're going to be at Render ATL. So I am in Atlanta. I love Atlanta. I moved here about 4 years ago, and it's like my favorite place in the world now. And Render ATL is a very Atlanta conference. It's going to be from June 1st through 4th. Replay is actually offering a free workshop all about debugging React applications. So it's a 2-hour workshop. We're going to be digging into some actual bugs, taking a look at replays, understanding root causes, like potential fixes. There's also a really, really great slate of speakers. Very, very excited to see some of them in person as my, for the first time. And yeah, so as the workshop for Replay is currently on waitlist. You can join the waitlist. Just go to the Get Tickets and you can register there in order to be added to the waitlist in case spots do open up. So yeah, so you can do that right here. And this is the debugging React applications workshop. So it's a free workshop. We can see if you can get added to the waitlist and then also if you are going to be in the Atlanta area or you're attending the conference, definitely come and say hi. I will be there talking to all of you people, and we'll probably have some Replay stickers and maybe a unicorn or two to hand out as well. So that is coming up June 1st through 4th. And then, awesome. So let me go ahead and pop that URL on the screen as well, renderatl.com. Awesome. So I'm just checking the chat here. Okay. And last but not least is Vue. Okay, so we've covered Angular, we've covered React, and now let's talk about Vue. So we have VueConf coming up, and this is also in June. This is going to be June 8th through the 10th. And I'm going to be speaking at this event about debugging Vue applications. So you may notice a trend. Very excited about debugging and really excited at taking a look at some of the common patterns across frameworks, but then things that are also specific to those individual frameworks. It's one of the things that I've learned a lot and done a lot of research on since joining Replay. And it's great. When I was at a company called Cypress, which is a testing framework, and also had to help people test all different types of applications built with different types of frameworks. So sometimes you're tapping into a Vuex store, sometimes it's an NGRX store, sometimes it's a Redux store in order to drive your tests and make assertions. And so have some familiarity with all these platforms, and it's really great to see the communities around them. So I will be giving a talk at VueConf. In addition, I will also be supporting one of the workshops. So my Jessica Sachs, my friend, and also former colleague from Cypress, is giving a workshop on stress-free testing for Vue 3. This is going to feature the Cypress component testing library. So you may have used Cypress for end-to-end testing or UI testing. There is also a Cypress component testing library. And this workshop is going to talk all about testing your components and then testing in Vue, whether you're using components or whether you're using UI testing. And I'm going to be hopping on as TA to assist with that workshop. So yeah, really excited to get back into testing. It's something that's still very near and dear to me, and I love the Cypress community. So I will be. You can catch me at either of those events during VueConf, either the workshop or during the actual conference for the talk. So again, you can check that out at vueconf.us. And tickets are still available. That's in Fort Lauderdale, which is just outside of Miami. Again, that's June 8th through 10th. And yeah, you can register at vueconf.us. And yeah, we're excited to see you there. So awesome. So yeah, a lot of events coming up. Like I said, if you pretty much, like, by the end of this summer will not have an excuse to not have talked to me about Replay, I think is the moral of that story. But yeah, I mean, I just love being able to talk to all these developers and get a sense of what things that they're struggling with when it comes to bugs and how we can help make that better. So very excited to see everyone and check that out. Awesome. So those are the updates for events. Let's talk updates for Replay, the product itself. We had a pretty cool week. We talked about this a little bit on stream last week. We had Mark here, Mark Erickson. You know, he's a software engineer here on the team. Also, Redux 4 maintainer, awesome debugging expert, teacher, everything, all of the above. And we gave a quick demo of Redux Dev Tools. So we have, you know, released that now for version 0.5. It's still kind of, you know, 0.5. It's experimental. Definitely want to kind of keep that in mind as you're using it. But you can check out our documentation. We've added a Redux Dev Tools page to our docs under reference, and you can see a video of it in action from last week's stream. And also it has the information on how to get started and how to check it out. But, you know, essentially, as we demoed on stream last week, you'll be able to, anytime that you're recording an app that talks to Redux Dev Tools, you'll be able to see the list of all the dispatches, the actions, and then inspect them, see the log monitor, and see the chart. There, right now, it's essentially a kind of the existing UI from Redux Dev Tools. So we're going to work on kind of improving that UI so it makes more sense within the context of Replay. But you can check it out. You can get started. If you do run into any issues, let us know on Discord. We had a bug report this week and we pushed to fix. So thank you very much to our community member for that, for making that bug report. And yeah, so really excited to kind of touch back on that and let you know that that's come out. And so, all right, next is we have made some changes to our Replay library. If you aren't familiar with the Replay library, sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. It just kind of depends on what your context is. The Replay library is where every replay that you've made that's associated either with your personal library or your team is collected. So you can come here, you can see a list of all the replays that you have. So we've added a filtering functionality to the Replay library. So you'll notice here I'm in my little test team, and I have a filter. So now I can filter replays that are just in the last 7 days. And I can also filter by node replays. So this is pretty exciting. This is replays that the target is node. So the reason that we're kind of getting into this filtering work is because of the work that we're doing in regards to recording automated tests in CI. So I have demoed before on stream that we have a Playwright test recorder. We also do have a Puppeteer test recorder. And what this does is it'll essentially lets you swap out your whatever browser you would normally run your end-to-end tests with the Replay version of that browser. So with Playwright, it supports Firefox, and then we also have Chromium for Linux, but that's in beta. And then on Puppeteer, it supports Chromium, also in Linux, also beta version of that browser. But what happens is because you're using the Replay browser to record the automated test, if there's a failure, the replay of that failure is automatically uploaded to your library. This makes it really easy to debug and understand like what happened, right? As we all kind of know, I know too from my days of talking to a lot of people working with automated tests, is that whatever happens in CI can be a bit of a black box. Usually the first question is this a real failure, or do I just need to rerun the tests? Is something broken with the app code, with my test code? Is it the environment that's down? And having to kind of try to recreate those issues can be really tough. So that's what we're really working to improve by being able to provide these automatic debuggable assets of whenever your tests fail in CI. But to do that, you need to be able to better sort through these replays and understand what context they're in, right? So we just kind of saw the list here. I'll go back to it. I just have a lot of failed tests. These are from a Playwright run that we were working on. And so right now, I don't necessarily know like what run they're associated with. Was there a certain commit, or, who knows? And so unless I just like immediately saw the failure that went into my library, I might have a little bit of a hard time finding it. So we do have search functionality already in the library, but we're working on improving how to better organize and categorize the replays that you may have coming from automated test recordings versus ones that you may, record yourself using the replay browser. So yeah, so this is part of some upcoming work to the replay library that you can expect. So yeah, check that out. And speaking of the automated tests, both of the test recorders, like I mentioned, they're in beta, Puppeteer, and then also Playwright. I would say Playwright is more advanced than Puppeteer. And then we also do have a very experimental Cypress recorder as well. So yeah, you can check those out in our docs. And again, just keeping in mind that this is kind of like, these are beta implementations, especially if you're using Puppeteer with Chromium. Chromium is a kind of also a beta implementation of the replay browser, but these guides will show you kind of how to get started. And as I mentioned before, we do have a GitHub action for Playwright that will that you can leverage in order to automatically upload the recordings without having to do additional custom configuration. That works best if you're using npx playwright test as your command to launch the test. But if you have any questions too, you can definitely reach out to us and we'll help you get those configured. We'd love to get some feedback on that. All right. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is just, we had a couple of bug fixes. So one is this a bug around what graphics we were showing in the viewer in a replay. And I'll pop this up here. The nice thing about replay being open source is that you can kind of dig into all this yourself too if you're interested. But what was happening is, so when you replay a replay, it's not just a like video recording. We're actually repainting the canvas. We're like rendering the DOM in the context of that replay. That's why you're able to get such accurate information about what was happening during the context of that bug. But because of that, sometimes we're having issues where you're paused at a certain point and what was on the screen wasn't actually matching up with the timeline. And this has to do with how we kind of fetch the current information around what's being displayed on the screen. And I actually have a replay of this issue. So we'll dig into that a little bit later on during the debugging section of the stream. But that's been improved now. So we did push a fix for that. So now you should be able to, jump around in the timeline and see more accurate graphics, even regardless of what the loading status is for that replay. So if you do see any issues, let us know. We'll continue to work on that and improve that as well. But I wanted to call that out. And regarding kind of related to this kind of concept of loading. So the thing about replay is, as I mentioned, as it's repainting everything. So when you're loading, sometimes you have access to information in the replay right away. Sometimes you don't. And we want to make that really clear when you're using replay, what's happening. So we've added this global loader, and you can see on the bottom of the screen, it kind of was ticking up there. And what that means is that the replay itself, the information, like the print statements that would be available in the console log, the function executions, that's still loading up. And this one, was great. We're pretty great. So we're able to kind of see like that ticking up. It's 20-second replay. And now all of my console logs have output. Sometimes before we added this, a replay could still be loading, but it wasn't necessarily super clear that was happening. So you may try to hover over a line and see how many hit counts there were, or you may try to output to the console and it wasn't loading. And really, it's just because we weren't communicating as well as we could what the current load status of the replay was. So that global loader will give you an indication now of what's like, what's happening with the load status, what percentage it's at. And then the other thing too is if it's for some reason slower than expected, if we're maybe running into some hanging or some issues, you'll see a cute little turtle icon appear next to the loader. So if you happen to experience that, definitely let our team know. Where we want to kind of be aware of anytime that things aren't loading as quickly as they should. You can always reach out to us at replay.io/Discord, chat directly with our team if you do see any kind of loading issues, or if you see something that's like not loading, you see the turtle icon, if you can grab a replay, or if you can grab some information and let us know. You can also always create a GitHub issue if you don't want to hop onto our Discord at github.com record replay dev tools, and you can always file bug reports there as well. But yeah, so that should hopefully give you some better information as you're getting up and running with the replay loading. Last but not least, I mentioned earlier about Chromium being in beta. It is still very much in beta, but we did kind of push a few improvements to it. It hasn't been released yet. So this is actually a roadmap item, not a changelog item. But we're in the process of improving Chromium because we are seeing more people use it for recording in CI, which is exciting. But we want to make sure that continues to be performant for you. So if you are using Chromium for recording automated tests with replay, keep an eye out for that. We'll definitely post in Discord and kind of like notify. You shouldn't have to do anything if you're using it in CI with a typical configuration. The next time that your CI process goes to install, it'll just be the new version of it. If you do have any kind of custom configuration, or if you're running it locally, you may have to do npx replay.io /replay, update browsers as a CL, as basically using the replay CLI command to update the browser. But in most cases, you should just be able to kind of see the improvements once that's been released on your next CI run using Chromium. So yeah, so hopefully that'll be helpful for you. And we're going to continue to, work on improving the Chromium build. We do have it on our roadmap for this summer to release an actual build. Right now, we have it for CI, obviously, like this is kind of the main use case. You can build this repo locally, but it takes, it's advanced mode, I would say personally. So there's setting up builds instructions here, but we are working on creating like a downloadable Chromium build for Mac. And that's on our roadmap for this summer. So yeah, so keep an eye out for that. I think that's pretty exciting. So you could be able to start to record bugs in Chromium and not just in the current Firefox build. Okay, so those are kind of the changes that we had that came up this week. Really excited to get any feedback that people have on things. I just want to also note that we are pushing a lot of quality improvements right now. That's something that we've been really focused on. And so, like I said, if you do run into any issues, let us know. We are continually working to improve in that area. And replays are always helpful. Bug reports are always super helpful there. So awesome. So I wanted to next talk, I wanted to give a contributor shout out. So Replay is open source, and we've had some really awesome contributors hop into our Discord and into our GitHub repo, and that's been really exciting. One of them that I wanted to feature this week is this open pull request. It was just kind of open recently, but Ryota's been working on it with the team over the course of this week. It actually started as a bug report, as an issue that Ryota identified, with the kind of the font size being a little small. And so this is a really great win, I think, for usability and accessibility. But essentially what this will do is kind of add an experimental setting to be able to scale font size larger. And yeah, so really excited to see that land. Feel free to check out the video. And if you do have any, any ideas or you want to contribute, our DevTools repo is marked with good first issue. So you can check those out, reach out to the team. We're happy to help you get set up if you have any questions with contributing. I personally have contributed 2 bug fixes to the DevTools repo. So some of our contributors have contributed more than I have, but we love working with the open source community, and there's some really kind of nice, good first issues in there, specifically around the UI. So you can see Travis Arnold, who joined the team, has been kind of identifying, along with John Bell, our designer, some of these kind of UI polish bugs or UI polish issues. And those are a really great way to kind of get your hands in there with some working with some of our React components and our design system, and check out the code base. So we also do have, there's always hasreplay.io. So this is a website that is a collection of any open issue on GitHub and closed issues that have a replay attached. So if you are looking to specifically fix bugs, maybe you want to work on bugs versus feature work, these all have replays attached to them. So it's easy to kind of get in and get started with debugging these issues. All right, and the only other item that I wanted to highlight is we do have an upcoming feature on our roadmap that is experimental. So this is something called Turbo Replay, and it's a change to our backend that allows replays to run on multiple controllers to improve performance and to allow you to record longer replays. So essentially, it greatly speeds up the experience of recording with and reviewing replays. It is experimental, but it's a infrastructure kind of backend improvement that we expect to really kind of help a lot. This is an example here of how you can get that set up. You go into your settings under experimental, and it's Turbo Replay here. So this is replay recordings across multiple instances. Again, that's like a backend change, but it will really, improve the amount of time that you're able to record a replay, and then also the performance when viewing replays as well. So if you want to check that out, we'll be releasing some more information about it officially, but right now it's just experimental, but that's something to kind of keep an eye out for. And if you start to run into any issues, you might want to enable it and see if that improves the performance. So great. Let me just do a quick check of the chat. Let's see, comments. All right, looks good. All right, so with the time that we have left, I wanted to dig into a replay. I just realized that looking at this, that this is like a replayception one. I'm very used to seeing these. So at Replay, we use Replay to debug Replay. And sometimes you're working on a replay and then you encounter a bug in Replay, and then you make a replay of that replay. And so sometimes that can happen multiple times. So this is something that was attached to the issue that I mentioned earlier about graphics loading in the incorrect space. And so I want to just kind of dig into this replay, take a look at what's going on, what we've been able to identify. So I apologize if you're getting a little bit of like a infinity mirror vibe here. This is actually just kind of what it looks like when you record a replay of a replay of a replay. But yeah, once we get to the code side, hopefully it looks a little bit less intimidating. So yeah, let's go ahead and dig in. So again, with replay, you can record any bug that's taking place, you can record it in the replay browser itself, and you can record any URL, which is why you're able to record a replay with replay, because what you do is you just navigate to that URL, to that replay in your replay browser, and you record it. And so if you look at our Has Replay site, a lot of these that have replay are for replay, and so you may have that kind of same experience. But what's happening in this bug is when the replay first loads, we're shown as paused at the end, but the graphics are not for that point. So here, this is the replay that is being viewed. We can see on the timeline that it's all the way at the end, and we can see it's 37 out of 37. But this screen here does not correlate with the end of the replay. This is still the loading screen. So this would be way, way earlier in the context of that replay, because replay is recording as the replay itself like loads and then views. And so what's happening is, even though we're paused at the end, the graphics that are viewed on screen are not correct. So that is essentially the bug that's happening. To dig into it a little bit more, at this point, after clicking into the recording, we're about 37 seconds in, right? Again, towards the end, right here. But the graphics are really closer to where 22 seconds was, so it would be more kind of right here. So even though we're clicking here, we're showing graphics from around this point. And this is interesting to note, because we weren't at that point previously, right? Initially, it was showing the beginning. And then here, it's showing the middle, even though we're clicking backwards. And the thing to keep in mind here, and the reason why this is happening, which is a really kind of interesting thing that I learned about replays and how it works, is that replay loads, from the front to the end. And so that's why it makes sense here, even though we're at the end, replay has only loaded the graphics for the beginning, because it's loading front to end. When we click here at 37 seconds in, the replay is actually only loaded to 22 seconds in. So we're actually grabbing whatever the closest paint is of the canvas, because the replay hasn't completed loading. So we're at 37 seconds, and the closest is going to be the last paint that loaded, which is 22 seconds. So that's kind of why we're working backwards. But at the end, we're showing the front because that's all that loaded. We're at 37 seconds in. We're showing 22 seconds in because, again, that's where the load is at that point. But it's very, it's kind of relational based. We're going for whatever's closest, but because the entire replay hasn't finished loading yet, closest is can be pretty far. And that's what's happening with the way that this is set up. And here, at this point, the graphics are correct, approximately. And that is because at this point now the replay has loaded all the way through. This is one of the motivations for adding the global loader indicator on the bottom here, because if this is still showing 20% loaded, then you know that the graphics aren't going to be fully loaded yet. And that's also helpful for us as a team to understand why things might be happening. But there's also other additional work that can take place with trying to kind of know where we need to grab in order to get the correct information. So let's go ahead and dig into the code now. So this is the replay dev tools. I have a couple of files already open just because I was playing with this earlier. We can kind of take a look and see. The first thing that I want to point out is this last comment here, this function call, video ready.resolve. So this is where we actually finally have all the paint points. And it's all the way down here in the console. It's at essentially the end of kind of where we set the recording. So this is where we've actually resolved this point in time. And we can kind of navigate to that hit, and we can see that this is where its set of graphics has resolved. However, we get the most recent paint or mouse event here. And it doesn't really work because we're not totally loaded yet. And then here, this is where we're comparing the time in our Redux store to the point that we're trying to get from the back end, like that, like time. And I think what's happening is, so we can kind of see here, if we go to this like paint hash, these are all happening up top. The first one indicated here is the comment that Josh left. So the current time is 35645 in Redux, which corresponds here. But we're requesting a paint hash for this other point. And again, the paint hash is going to be the point in the back end, like that image that we're trying to display. And they're not really matching up because not everything has fully loaded yet. And so again, so the check here, so we're checking to see if the unfocused region is loaded, but really what we need to do is like understand, has the entire replay loaded yet? Do we have all the graphics that we need in order to be able to navigate to a point in time? And that's what's being kind of that's happening in this area. If they're hovering, if they've clicked on a comment marker, if they've clicked on an unfocused region, then we're doing some evaluation to see if that area is loaded or not. But we're not accounting for like other use cases around the entire recording not being loaded yet, or if we don't have the paints for that region yet. So this is, as for me, this is super interesting. Like I said, I've done 2 bug fixes on our front end. They were mostly related more to just like UI and how it rendered and working with the Redux store. And there's this whole other aspect of replay, which is how does it interact with our back end to get all the information about the recording in order to display that information. And that part is still newer to me. And this was a really good way for me to kind of get oriented with understanding that relationship and how we're making those requests, how we're analyzing that information, and how it compares to the data on the front end, because it's not always a one-to-one relationship. And we have what's called mismatches. If you read there was a blog post by Cannon, one of our back-end engineers, where he talked a lot about how he categorized mismatches between the front end and the back end that can lead to errors. It was super interesting to understand more about how that works and how we track those errors. This is kind of, from the front end perspective, seeing what that looks like as well. And it's something that, I probably, if I had to try and pull this down locally or had to like recreate this issue, I would have had to pair with Josh and like ask him what was going on and get a better sense. But because we had this replay attached to the PR, I was able to spend, maybe like 15 minutes or so earlier today poking around in it and logging some different things and kind of getting a sense of what they were talking about. And and I'm able to learn a lot more than I would have without this tool. So really excited to kind of get exposed to more of these bugs and better understand the code base, but then also code bases in general and how we're kind of building these things out. So yes, that's an example of kind of how you can use replay to debug. If you're curious about how we ended up fixing this, you can check out the PR. It is open source, and you can see that what files were changed. This is always my next favorite part to do, is to see like, okay, I see what's going on. Like, now how do we solve it? And essentially, we're calculating now, like, do we have all the paint points? What's the time beyond the last known paint point that we do have? If we're trying to get something that's beyond the last paint point, better handling that. So here it's like if paint index is beyond the known paints in time, then there's no graphics to paint. And not just like making the best guess and showing something that's incorrect, but just waiting for it to actually load and get to the correct time. So yeah, so that is the bug that I wanted to show you today. Those are the new releases we have this week. Those are all the fun events that we have coming up. A lot of exciting things happening here at Replay. Also just been really great to talk with more and more of you in our Discord, see some contributors from the community, and share some bugs. So like I mentioned, if you would like to be on this stream with me and with members of the replay team, please reach out to me. I am Cecilia Creates. I'm also in the Discord as well, replay.io/Discord. Would love to dig into some dev tools, bugs, topic of your choice around debugging on stream here. We do record every Fridays. And then, yeah, if you do end up attending the Angular Community Meetup, Render ATL or ViewComp, definitely come find me and say hi. I have the bright blue hair, and I'll be wearing my replay shirt. So definitely would love to chat about anything kind of debugging related or anything development related as well. So thank you again for tuning in this week. It's been really fun, and we'll be back next week. Cheers, everyone.